So I'm delighted to be here today to talk about human factors and try and demystify just a little touch what human factors is or what we think it is. I am fortunate enough to be the co-chair for the Human Factors Work Group at Step Change. And it's an honour to be involved with that group and to be able to present some of the work today. I'm also an industrial psychologist. What that means is I'm really geeky and fascinated with how people perform at work, the situations that hinder them and the situations that help people thrive and prosper. Ergonomics, human factors. What does it mean? What comes to mind? Here's a definition for us. Ergonomics, otherwise known as human factors, according to the Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors, is the scientific discipline concerned with the understanding. Are you bored already? I am. Okay. What about a simpler, better definition? Human factors is really about understanding the things that get in the way of you being able to do a good job. So that's you doing your job well and being able to do your job safely. And what's really important is it's not about your mess-ups, it's about what messes you up. So a lot of times when we think about humans and the human element, there's words like the ones on the screen that come to mind. So we talk about competence. I'm not saying that competence isn't important. We talk about not following the rules, taking shortcuts. We might use the word complacency. And we might talk about not being aware of the risks. What do you think is the risk, if you want, of using these words? Anyone? They don't really lead to understanding, do they? You're absolutely right. They're catch-alls or they're throwaways that actually don't dig deeper. There's a saying in human factors, and that is, if you're doing a root cause analysis and you think that the root cause is human error, you're wrong. Human error is never the root cause. And when we land at these, they don't cause us to go further. What I want you to do now, just in your tables, in fact, if you just give me a minute, because I'll go first in the interest of vulnerability and transparency, I want you to discuss, perhaps in couples or trios, a time when something didn't go as planned. It could be this morning, it could be in the last 6 months, it could be in the last couple of years. It really doesn't matter. This is my Skoda Octavia TDI. Anybody know what the D stands for in TDI? Yeah, diesel. Not that day. It was masquerading as a petrol car. And that's it getting dropped off at the Colpy, my local garage. It's not just novices though, is it? Over 100 cars in Ireland, because the wrong fuel got bunkered into the wrong tank in that garage, received the wrong fuel. And has anybody heard of Perenco? Yeah, it's a rather large energy company. Francois Perraudot is the billionaire who likes to race cars. So he's got a Formula One car that he just kind of likes to take out and about. It's worth about 15 million. And he put the wrong fuel in, leading to his friends getting a sticker made up for him. So we all make mistakes, don't we? Hopefully not like that every day. Right, so just in your tables, just have a small chat. Just, as I said, I'll give you a couple of minutes. Okay, hopefully you've all got to share. Hands up if you are aware of the guidance from the Health and Safety Executive, HSG 48. Not so many of us. So that's the go-to document that the Health and Safety Executive provides us. And we want to talk about, if we want to understand human factors, we want to understand how things go wrong. It's pretty difficult to see there, but I'm going to sum up that slide. We can have violations, where people do things, I guess, willfully wrong. And then we have what we can call errors. Now, I would argue that most violations are errors. For the simple reason, if you've got an error, the chances are something wasn't noticed, something wasn't remembered, or you made a poor decision. Now, if you make a violation, I would suggest that you've made a poor decision. Now, I would guarantee that 90% of the wrong occurrences, unplanned events that you just spoke about would have fallen under not remembered, not noticed, or a decision that, looking back, it wasn't a good decision. The solution did not meet the scenario. So for starters, HSG 48. We've all played Spot the Difference. I'd like to play Spot the Difference now. I know this is highly pixelated. Do your best. But again, you can do this in threes or twos. I'm going to give you 1 minute to spot as many differences as you can. I'm going to show it now. Difference between the left and the right. Okay, I said that was a minute. I didn't really keep very good time. How many did you get? Do a quick count. 4, okay? So we've got 4, we've got a 5 up the back, any more than a 5? Not too bad, not too bad at all. How many do you see now? Okay. Let me ask you a different question. If we were going to do the same exercise, but we were doing it on something like Celebrity Who Dares Wins, and I wanted to make this really, really difficult for you, because this is child's play, isn't it? This is really easy. But if I wanted to make this really difficult, how would I do that? How could I basically destine you to fail? Instead of setting you up for success, I want to make you fail as much as possible. Any ideas? I could reduce the number or increase the number. Less time, so I could put you into pressure, intense pressure. What if I asked you to bounce a basketball at the same time as doing the exercise? What if I woke you up in the middle of the night when you were tired? What if there was glare, extreme sunlight? We could go on. So some of the examples that we'll typically get, the room isn't exactly congruent with the exchange, is people will come up automatically. They'll talk about fatigue. When? What's the workload? We'll talk about distractions. We'll talk about home life, interruptions while we're doing this, unclear instructions. If I asked you to do something else as well, we spoke about time pressure and we spoke about multitasking. Guess what? In about 30 seconds, we've come up with some of the most common human factors that we know of. If we take care of these, we start taking care of our people. So over the last 18 months, the Human Factors work group at Step Change we've been thinking, what are the human factors that typically mess our people up? Remember, it's not about the mess-ups of our people, it's what messes our people up. And we come up with, we're trying to get a catchy name. If anybody's got an idea, so aviation's got the deadly dozen, we've got the 11, and we just can't come up with a nice tagline. So answers on a postcard, if you can think of something that goes with the essential 11 or whatever. So human pressure. So is the job important? Is it being stressed that it's really important and you cannot fail? What about time pressure? Written information. How many times do we look at procedures and we think they're too long, they're unwieldy, they're unclear? Actually, if you followed the procedure step by step, you probably couldn't even do the job. Communication. I know that my previous excellent speaker just spoke about communication. Competence. Do we have the right people? Do they have the necessary recent experience? Working conditions. Is it hot? Is it cold? Roles and responsibilities, are they clearly defined? Task design. So what's the equipment like? Is it going to set us up for failure? Is it intuitive? The way that the job's set up, is it a tricky job? Is it complex? Worker readiness. How are you? How are you today? Are you ready to go? Is there something going on? Workload, divided attention, and something we call unspoken unease. So unspoken unease is quite simply, we can think about it as when we don't feel psychologically safe, we don't feel as if we can share our opinions, our concerns, and our ideas. So that's the 11 that we've came up with, and we're trying to introduce a way of encouraging people to talk about these factors as part of their toolbox talks. We do a great job of talking about energy octagons, hazard wheels, we talk about radiation, we talk about electricity, and so on and so forth. But what we know is 80% of the time, when things go wrong, it's down to a human factor. But the human factor really has always got something behind it. And most of the time, it's going to be one of these. So we call them performance influencing factors because that's what the health and safety executive calls them. Some people might call them error traps, error promoting conditions, flags, take your pick. And we're not mandating what you might wish to call them. So I was asked to think about watch person, a watch officer. And I've got to be honest, I'm an industrial psychologist. I'm not really au fait with marine industry. So for me, it could be the movie, it could be someone who looks at timepieces, or it could be what you call the night watchman in cricket, who's basically someone who's not very good at batting, and you basically get them to go and bat until the time's over and keep your good batters till later. But what I will say is, in my experience, whether it's in rail, whether it's in energy or healthcare, it's the same things that undo us, it's the same things that cause us problems because we've got the same brains. At the end of the day, we are merely human. So we would have all seen this in the last week. Investigations will be ongoing, and I was down at Great Yarmouth 2 days ago when I took this picture of the Stena Immaculate. And we know when we don't get things wrong, we can have dire consequences. So worker readiness. I'm just going to highlight a few of the 11 that we just spoke about. Worker readiness. It's important that we learn from other industries, whether it is healthcare, whether it's nuclear, whether it's aviation. We had someone come from Bristow's come and speak to us, and he said that a pilot, and he said before he leaves the office block and goes off to fly, they've got posters, and he'll ask himself, am I safe? Which is, do I feel well? Is there any illness? Is there an adverse effect, or do I feel as if my medication is affecting me negatively? Am I under stress? Is there any alcohol? Am I sober as I should be? Am I fatigued? And we could talk about, you could have 25 minutes just on fatigue, but the bottom line is, if you've been awake over 18 hours, you basically become as impaired as you would be if you started to drink, and every hour that you're awake further, you will become more and more impaired. And then emotion. Have you got problems going on at home? What about at work? Are you angry? Are you sad? Just something that we can take away. So we're going to talk about design now for a while. When is a door not a door? Well done when it's ajar. So there's a book called The Design of Everyday Things by a guy called Don Norman, and he takes doors as an example of everyday things that just aren't necessarily intuitive. So we've all been there. You've went to push, you need to pull. You've went to push, you've tried to push, you've tried to pull, and you've maybe had to slide. I don't know if you've ever encountered a door that you didn't even know was there because it was just plate glass. We could go on. Standardization. Left tap, right tap. Where does your cold tap go? Is it the left or the right? Traditionally, your cold tap would be on the right-hand side. So if you were blind, because there used to be lots and lots of blind people back in the Victorian times, you'd be less likely to get scolded. Why is that important? Why is that important? You know, if we go into industry, there's no standardization. And I'm not here to give any answers. That's the thing. I don't have the answers. What I hope to do is inspire conversation and ideas, and to basically take the dialogue further. So as I'm speaking, you'll maybe thinking, okay, this is how we could apply it. This is what we need to talk about. So if you're in the oil and gas industry, if you look at something called a blowout preventer, on some of those control panels, if the valves are open, it's green. If it's one company that's done it, another company, they'll be red. And you can imagine the consequences of that non-standardization. I don't know if we've managed to get any video. If we haven't, no, it's good. So the video shows it's basically a bicycle that's not exactly back to front, but when if you were to turn the handlebars one way, it would go the opposite way that you'd expect. I don't care how long you've been riding bicycles. You could be a courier, you could be riding one every day. You're not going to make it more than a couple of inches without the bicycle falling over. We don't respond well when things are not intuitive. How many times have someone been behind you when you're operating a computer and they'll say, go up, and you'll go to go down, or they say, go down. The way you control the mouse, there just isn't that understanding. So this example is, it was a supply vessel, and the joystick was set up as such that when you pushed the joystick to the right, you think, well, I'll go in the right direction. But what it meant is the thrusters would go to the right. So what happened? You went in the opposite direction to what you thought, leading to a collision. What knob does what? And it's these standard things that if we understand, we should be able to call out. So, Alex, when we spoke earlier on about the alarm, sometimes we think that our people are not empowered to actually make changes, and it's about telling them and letting them know. Well, first of all, giving them some very basic training on so they can recognize when things aren't right, and then empowering them to actually raise the concerns and make the changes. So visual information, you've got dials that are seen, but they're difficult to understand. We've got tricky technology. It's difficult to use. It takes too long to use. It just doesn't work. And what I would have to say, if you want your people to be safe, particularly from a human factors point of view, you don't know where to start, get out in the park, ask them how they're doing, and ask them, what's the trickiest part of this job? What do you struggle with? If you identify that, you're probably going to identify the parts that are unsafe and the parts that are going to give you your unplanned events. I was amazed at this. If you notice the date, 1877, it is found that anything that can go wrong at sea generally does go wrong sooner or later. The human factor, we've been talking about human factors in marine for what? Over 100 years, 150, cannot be safely neglected in planning machinery. If attention is to be obtained, the engine must be such that the engineer will be disposed to attend to it. Fascinating. Does anybody know what this is? It is a one-legged stool. It was Alfred Nobel of the Nobel Prize fame, kind of invented dynamite. Well, certainly made a lot of money through dynamite. And this was Escher. He wanted his biggest nitroglycerin factory to be in Scotland. So to fight fatigue, that's a one-legged stool. So your operator doesn't fall off and fall asleep. Now we have all types of, see if you just end the presentation, that's fine. I'll just talk. I'm gonna, so basically if you just end it. Okay, so we're just out of time. We could have spoke about attention, we could have spoke about communication, we could have went into more detail on worker readiness. There's a whole plethora and world of human factors out there that I think we could embrace and really take advantage of. Any questions for me?
Watchkeeping, a lot of time in the dark,
Yep.
nothing's happening. Comparable in some ways, I would imagine, to guarding something when you're in the military. Does the military do any training on this to guard against fatigue, to sort of see through that and sort of almost being in limbo?
I'm not so sure. Sorry.
Is that something that's transferable? I'm simply...
Well, I think there are things that are transferable because we've known since the 1940s, we've been doing what we call vigilance studies. So there's something called the Mackworth clock, where basically a hand goes around, saying this very simply, and they would actually get people to monitor when it did a double, basically went 2 paces as opposed to 1, and how quickly people would start to lose vigilance. We're talking about 20 minutes. That's the truth. So, has anybody been a lifeguard? Yeah. So how long were you on poolside?
45 minutes, I think was the total.
Yeah, that's it, air traffic controllers. So there are things we can definitely learn, but the worst thing we can do is just say to people, pay attention. Well, we're always paying attention, but you might be paying attention to the wrong things. Anything else?
Yep. Okay. Well, Jared, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Fascinating subject. Fascinating subject. You and I have spoken for length in the past on this. It's a subject we could speak all day on.
Fantastic.
I think it's a great thing.